to be here with you this morning, to be in the house of the Lord, and so exciting as always to gather together to worship the Lord. And we're excited that you can be with us today, whether you're here on campus or watching online. We're just excited to be together. It's a great time. We always look forward to the gathering and being in worship. And today being the first time, we'll do one service and kind of making some changes as we work around different things. But as we work back to a sense of normalcy as much as we can, today we're passing out bulletins. And so another step in that direction of what normal kind of can look like. So we have a variety of announcements to share with you today. And I'll get to those in just a second. If you came in, if you're here on campus, we just had left some of the memorial folders out in the foyer, and one of the books with photos and things in it from yesterday's service for Pat, for my mom. And so we had a great time. I know many of you were able to join us online and be part of that celebration. And Facebook was nice enough to delete our recording of the service yesterday because we had a slideshow in there of photos, and we used a song, part of a song that is copyrighted by somebody. So Facebook took the memorial service down. The good thing is we have recorded it, so we'll be putting it on YouTube, and we'll get that fixed. So we'll blank out the music for that portion. We'll have that up on our YouTube channel. So if any of you didn't get a chance to see that yesterday, you'll be able to watch that this week. We'll send out some information letting you know when we get that up and going. But we do have several announcements. So you'll have to run them. Will I see them in front of me or just behind me? Just behind me. Okay, well, I don't know what's behind me, so go ahead, Dylan. All right, so coming up some things. So part of our getting back to normal stuff is we're doing some things on Wednesday nights. We have a women's Bible study on campus, and we had a men's study, but we kind of had to put that on hold for a short time. But we're doing some stuff with our kids, with our children and families and different things. So coming up on Wednesday night, the 21st, there will be a pumpkin carving time for our kids ministry and any parents who want to come and join with them. We've got some families from our from our school age program that'll be joining us that night too. So going to be a whole bunch of kids doing a whole bunch of carving. So come and be a part of that if you can. Also, the following week, we're going to be having a costume contest out there and a movie night for our school age children. So if you want to come, I think they're going to end up probably doing the movie night outside on the side of the building even. And it's going to be kind of a semi-scary movie, having some fun, but Pastor Carl has a plan and purpose in all of that and wants to use that as a great teaching time. But we're encouraging kids and parents to show up and dress up and have some fun with that as well. And then also, we have a couples paint night coming up. So I don't know if any of you have ever gone to one of those paint night things where you sit and they come up and they tell you, this is what we're going to paint, and then everybody has to paint it. So we're going to do a couples paint night here at the church. You can sign up. There's an event on our Facebook page that you can find, and you can sign up there. I think we have a sign up in the foyer. You can sign up there, or you can shoot an email to our info@ridgeviewcc.org and say, hey, put us down for couples night. It's $50 a couple. That covers all the supplies, your paint thing, your stuff, and we'll have some snacks and drinks and things as well. And so sorry to cut anybody else out who says, well, I wanted to go. It is a couples night. We're trying to do just a fun thing for couples. So plan on making that part of your night and your schedule if you can. I think it'd be great. It'll be a lot of fun, and maybe we'll give a prize for the best and the worst painting. I don't know. But we might do something with that. Also, two other things. We are going to be having some baptisms coming up. I think it's in your bulletin. On the 8th of November, we're going to have a baptism Sunday. So if you're interested in baptism, you need to let me know. The week before, on the 1st, we'll be having a class that morning before service, so probably at 9:30, I think we put in there. And we'll be just making sure that you're fully aware of baptism and what it's about and what the purpose is. But if you're interested of getting baptized, or maybe you want to get baptized again, you got baptized when you were young and life's taking you down a different road and you feel like you'd like to make maybe a new commitment to the Lord in a new way, then let me know, and we will set you all up for that. But that will be on November the 8th, will be the baptisms. And then in the foyer are a stack of these things. And there's a huge stack, and we actually have another stack that's even that goes along with it if we run out. But here's what we're wanting you to do. This year there is no fall festival because we can't do massive events, and we know that there's no way for us to put on our event and tell people that you can't just all show up at the same time. We can't do that, and we know that we have 800 people out here, and it's a big deal. So what we're encouraging you to be home on Halloween. Kids are still going to be out. There are stacks of these in the foyer. And what we want you to do is you take one of those and you just fold it in half. It's got a little crease. And it says the best treat of all. And inside of it is just kind of lets people know, here's what you can do if you're interested in a relationship with Jesus. And so it's a great little Halloween type track. On the back, it has information about our church, our preschool, our English services, Spanish services. It's got it all. So it's a great way to share about our church. So kids come to your door, drop some candy in, drop one of those in their bag or their bucket. If mom or dad, whoever, if there's an adult with them, make sure you put one in their hand. So everybody take some, be home that night, love on the kids and the people in your neighborhood, tell them about Jesus. This is a great opportunity and an easy way for you to get out and do that. Or if you're going to be out taking kids trick-or-treating, take a stack with you. And every time you stop at a house and your kids get candy, drop one of these off and leave it with somebody. It's just a simple way to let people know that Jesus loves them. And so we've got stacks and stacks of these. So take a bunch. Don't be shy and pass them out. You can give them out way ahead of time. You can start passing them out to people and say, hey, give them to friends. Say, just thought you might be interested. This is something about our church. And give those out. I think it would be great. Encourage you to do that as well. I think that's it. So Peggy has an announcement, I think. So is that on? I don't know.
Is it on? No? Is it on now? How about?
There we go.
Thank you, Heidi. Good morning. My name is Peggy Whitaker. You probably haven't seen me in a long time because we haven't been coming to church. Not because we don't want to come to church. We're taking care of somebody right now who can't come to church with us. So pray for him. But it has been a month for Pastor Appreciation. And I know we're 2 weeks into this month already, but if you didn't know, it is Pastor Appreciation Month, the month of October, every year. And so we are going to today honor our 5 pastors. 2 of them are not here. Maybe 3 of them are not here. For all of their love and devotion that they work at all year long. This is just 1 month or 1 day when we can say we really love you and appreciate all that you do, but we want you to say that to them more than just this day or this month. Also, if you would like to drop a card of appreciation into the basket out there for our pastors, it is available too. So this morning, we're going to ask Kevin and Heidi and Wally and Susan to come up, since they're the only ones I see. I don't see Christy and Carl. They're in the children's building. We saw Moises in the parking lot when we came in. He and Carrie and Pablo and Noemi, who minister out in Shafter, we gave them their cards already, but don't forget, if you see them, tell them how much you love them and appreciate all the work they do here. But this morning, we have you guys here, and we are so thankful for you, and we love you so much. Don't we? All right. Yes, that's what we need. Thank you, thank you. So, we'll start with, we'll start over here. Oops, that's Pastor Carl and Christy. Pastor Wally and Susan, they haven't been with us a long time, but it feels like it. But they have been with us enough that we love them very much, and we appreciate all the work they do. Their whole family that has helped us here at the church. Is there more of their family here?
Yep. Yeah, they're in the sound booth. They're working.
They're hiding up there.
They're running the presentation and online. So they are responsible for all that stuff, good or bad.
Now he came up. Yay. So thank you guys, too, for all your help. We love you guys. We're glad you're here. Don't leave. Okay, now it's your turn. So Pastor Keven and Heidi, they've been here just over a year. It seems like we've went through a war with them almost already. So many things have gone on, and it's so weird right now. But here we are on this Sunday when we're all together inside, and we appreciate that very much. And we love them, and we want them to feel our love. So this is just a small token for you guys. I'm not going to say to you what Buck said to Pastor Moises in the parking lot when I gave him his card, because ask Pastor Moises what Buck said to him when I gave him his card. But we love you guys very much so. And I'm going to mention Pastor Carl and Christy. Christy also has a birthday this month on, of all days, October 31st, Halloween. So wish her a happy birthday, and I'll give them their card later, I promise I will. Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you. Ready? All right. Well, why don't we stand? Let's worship the Lord together in song this morning and enjoy some time to honor the Lord as we go to Him in song this morning.
Where you go, I'll go. Where you stay, I'll stay. When you move, I'll move. I will follow you. All your ways are good, all your ways are sure. I will trust in you alone, higher than my sight, high above my life. I will trust in you alone, in you alone. Where you go, I'll go. Where you stay, I'll stay. When you move, I'll move. I will follow you. Whom you love, I'll love. How you serve, I'll serve. If this life I lose, I will follow you. Yeah, I will follow you. Yeah. Light into the world, light into my life. I will live for you alone. You're the one I seek, knowing I'll find. All I need is you alone. Where you go, I'll go. Where you stay, I'll stay. When you move, I'll move. I will follow you. When you love, I'll love. How you serve, I'll serve. If this life I lose, I will follow you. Yeah, I will follow you. Yeah. In you is life everlasting. In you is freedom. stay. When you move, I'll move. I will follow you. When you love, I love. And you serve, I'll serve. With this love I lose, I will follow. Where you go, I'll go. When you stay, I'll stay. When you move, I'll move. I will follow you. When you love, I'll love. And you serve, I'll serve. With this love I lose, I will follow you. Yeah, I will follow you. Yeah, I will follow you. Yeah, I will follow you. Yeah.
Well, good morning, church. It's so good to be with you this morning. Let's continue to worship God. And Christ is my reward and all of my devotion. Now there's nothing in this world that could ever satisfy. Through every trial, my soul will sing, no turning back. I've been set free. Christ is enough for me. Christ is enough for me. Everything I need is in you. You're everything I need. Christ, my all in all, the joy of my salvation. And this hope will never fail, for heaven is our home. Through every storm, my soul will sing, Jesus is here. To God be the glory. Oh, Christ is enough for me. Christ is enough for me. Everything I need is in you. You're everything I need. Oh, Christ is enough for me. Christ is enough for me. Everything I need is in you. You're everything I need. Oh, I have decided to follow Jesus. No turning back. No turning back. I have decided to follow Jesus. No turning back. No turning back. The cross before me, the world behind me. No turning back. No turning back. The cross before me, the world behind me. No turning back. No turning back. Oh, Christ is enough for me. Christ is enough for me. Everything I need is in you. You're everything I need. Oh, Christ is enough for me. Christ is enough for me. Yes, everything I need is in you. You're everything I need. I have decided to follow Jesus. No turning back, no turning back. I have decided to follow Jesus. No turning back, no turning back. I have decided to follow Jesus. No turning back, no turning back. I have decided to follow Jesus. No turning back, no turning back, no turning back, no turning back.
You stood before creation, eternity in your hand. You spoke the earth into motion, my soul now to stand. You stood before my failure and carried the cross for my shame. My sin weighed upon your shoulder, my soul now to stand. So what can I say? So what can I say? What can I do? But offer this heart, oh God, completely to you. So I walk upon salvation, your Spirit alive in me, my life to declare your promise, my soul now to stand. So what can I say? What can I do? Offer this heart, oh God, completely to you. So what could I say? And what can I do? Oh, but offer this heart, oh God, completely to you, completely to you, yeah. So I'll stand with arms high and heart abandoned in awe of the one who gave it all. So I'll stand, my soul, Lord, to you surrendered. All I am is yours, and so I'll stand. So I'll stand with arms high and heart abandoned in awe to the one who gave it all. So I'll stand, my soul, Lord, to you surrendered. All I am is yours, and all I am is yours. And all I am is yours. What could I say? what could I do? But offer this heart, oh God, completely to you. Sing that again. What can I say? So what could I say? What could I do? But offer this heart, oh God, completely to you.
Yesterday, I was reminded at Pat's funeral of what it looks like to live a life in the hope of Christ, full of unexplainable joy, unexplainable peace, and unexplainable strength. And I'm so grateful for our God for that. God, we give you our lives right now. We give them over to you. God, we surrender all of our heart, all of our mind, all of our soul, and all of our strength to you, God. God, take it all, God, and use it for whatever you choose. God, we say, here I am. Here I am, God. Send me. Let's sing this together. Here I am, down on my knees again, surrendering all, surrendering all. Find me here, Lord, as you draw me near. I'm desperate for you. I'm desperate for you. I surrender. And drench my soul as mercy and grace unfold. I hunger and thirst. I hunger and thirst. With arms stretched wide, I know you hear my cry. Speak to me now. Lord, speak to me now. I surrender. I surrender. I want to know you more. I want to know you more. I surrender. I surrender. I want to know you more. I want to know you more.
Lord, what a prayer that is for us to pray. Lord, have your way. That I want to know you more. So, Lord, have your way in me. Father, those are big words, and my heart is just overflowing this morning with a desire to truly mean those words from my own heart. God, that I want to know you more. I want you to have your way in me. God, may that be the desire of each heart that's worshiping with us today. That they would be able to pray that, to sing that as a declaration of truth, of how they feel about you. That they would want you. That they would want to know you more. That they would want you to have your way in them, Lord. Guys, we think about the message this morning. That is such a huge statement to make in light of the things we'll be discussing. Father, that for us to get to this place to say, Lord, have your way in me, is such a big deal. God, help us in this morning as we process some of that thought, God, and as we open ourselves up to seeing what it is that you're trying to do in our life, Lord. God, would you reveal yourself to us this morning, Lord, as we worship you, as we spend time in the Word, and as we've spent time in song. God, it's so good to be together, and Lord, we lift up those that are just dealing with whatever ailments and things may be going on in their lives, Lord. We ask that you would just continue to be with each and every one of them, Lord. And this morning we think of Ben Prophet's neighbor and dealing with the loss of a husband, a father, and God, we pray as we've been praying this week that you would comfort that family, and God, that you would just be with them, Lord, that they would know that you are real, and that they would open their hearts to receive the blessing of your love in those times that are difficult, such as these. God, as we continue to look at what new life looks like, God, in a daily setting, Lord, would you help those who are struggling, God, who are dealing with the pressures of working from home and helping their kids go to school and processing that pressure, Lord. God, we just continue to pray for those, Lord. We pray over these young kids that have been dealing with online learning, that are so many who are struggling so much, God. And Lord, as we hear that schools are thinking about reopening finally, God, we're praying that you would make a way for them to get back in there and get back in school, to be able to learn and to grow. And God, we pray that it would be a good thing for those, Lord. Father, we continue to pray for the upcoming elections and things that will be taking place in our country and that have such a huge impact, God. We pray against the division that's growing within our country, that's growing within our churches, Lord. We're asking for just a movement of your Spirit to guide and direct us, God, the church, that the church would seek you and would be directed by you, God, and that when we go to make those decisions, Lord, that we would do so based on your prompting and not our personal objectives or agendas, God, but we would do so because we have prayed and said, Lord, I want more of you in me. Guide us in even those things, Lord. Bless us now as we continue to worship, God, as we gather and spend time in your word. God, may you open our hearts, may you move in our lives, and may you draw us more into your presence. We pray your blessing upon this time. We ask it in your name. Amen. Amen. God bless you. You can be seated, and we are just blessed. Thanks to BJ for joining us today. We've been trying to get BJ to help for a while, and he's been working a lot and busy, and so it was so good to have him a part of our worship team today. And it's just great when we see people who have grown up in the church, around the church, or like BJ married into our church, kind of, and but to see them serving and giving of their talent and their love for the Lord. I remember when we did premarital counseling with Hannah and BJ, seems like yesterday, but that's been like 10 years now, right? Wow. It goes, and I remember those days. So good to see you up here and helping with us in that area. Always good. We going to continue in our series today on entitled Heart Dissection. We've been spending some time really looking at what a healthy heart for God looks like. Now, if you remember last week, we talked about the healthy heart being a heart that was full of obedience. And we discussed the fact that there was no such thing as partial obedience. Either you are obedient or you are not obedient. It's one or the other. And I reminded you that in order to have a heart that was obedient, that we must get back to this place of respecting God and fearing God. And that in order to do that, and in order to truly have an obedient heart, we have to learn to love God wholeheartedly and to pursue Him wholeheartedly and to make this desire to have Him in us. It needs to be a wholehearted desire. And so as we talked last week, we shared in a passage of Scripture out of Ephesians chapter 6. And I told you we were going to read it again this week and because there's a little more I wanted to say in there. And so I want to reread it this morning from what we read last week. It says, "Slaves, obey your earthly masters with respect and fear and with sincerity of heart, just as you would obey Christ." It says, "Obey them not only to win their favor when their eye is on you, but like slaves of Christ, doing the will of God from your heart." It says, "Serve wholeheartedly as if you were serving the Lord and not men, because you know that the Lord will reward everyone for whatever good he does, whether he is slave or free." Now, I told you last week that we would come back to this passage because I feel like there's a lot here, a lot there. And there's things that we could spend a lot of time in this passage. But I want to talk this week about the fact that a healthy heart seeks to be filled with God's will. And as we pursue God's will, that's a true definition of a healthy heart. And so if you want to know, do I have a healthy heart for God, you can begin to ask yourself the question, do I really truly pursue God's will for my life? And this kind of ties right into how we ended last week with this idea of wholeheartedly pursuing God and loving God and doing that from our heart. And so Paul challenges us to be doing the will of God from our heart. And I love that way he terms that. And that's where our discussion will get going this morning, is this idea and this attitude of our heart toward God's will for our lives. It's critical, the attitude of our heart and how we approach what God's will is for our lives. And it's the attitude in which we choose to do that. Because I will tell you that acceptance of God's will must come from the heart. And it's that attitude. It's that wholeheartedly loving God from the attitude of, I, deep within my heart, choose to accept God's will for my life. And that's not always a simple thing. But it's the real challenge. But it has to come from the heart. The only way to truly accept what God's will is for us is it has to come from our heart. How many of you have ever had someone give you a what I call a lip service apology? Any of you ever know that? Right? You know what I mean? They say sorry, but you know they don't mean that they're sorry. It's kind of like when your kids are fighting and one of them does something and you say, "Tell your brother you're sorry," and they're like, "Sorry." You know they're not sorry. You know that did not come from their heart anywhere. And some of you have probably been on the giving and receiving end of those apologies. Some of you have probably given some of those apologies to someone where you're like, "Well, I'm going to go tell them, yeah, I probably should tell them, I should probably apologize for that." But know in your heart that you don't mean it. And so this idea of wholeheartedly doing things for God comes into this. And if you're married, you probably know what I'm talking about, because many of you have had to apologize to your spouse for something and you didn't do it wholeheartedly. And I'll let you in on a little secret. They probably knew you didn't mean it. They probably weren't convinced that you were sincere. But at the same time, have you ever received a truly, from the heart, sincere apology from someone? There's this extreme difference. Years ago, early on in our ministry life, Heidi and I, we went through a very difficult situation while on staff at another church. And we were let go of our position of children's ministry and youth ministries, pastors. And it was a very difficult time for us. And we had tons of friends and family involved within the church there. And so we would continue to go to things over the years. We would visit the church for things and different things. And I remember that I would go there and we would be at something, and I would really feel like God would say, you need to go over and go say hi to the pastor. And I would be like, no, I don't. And God would say, no, you need to go say hi. And I'd be like, no, God. And literally, this is the conversation. Stand in the back of that church? Nope, not going to do it. God would say, no, you need to go say hi. No, I'm not, because he's going to ignore me. God would say, go say hi. So I would go, and I would go up and say, hey, how you doing? Good. Walk away. Pastor would walk away. And I would just be left standing there going, really, God? Why do you keep making me do this kind of stuff? I don't like this. And this went on for 8 years. We would go to things, and this was the interaction that we would have. And one day, we were in the middle of building this building. We were still meeting across the street, and I get a phone call. And it was from this pastor, and he said, wondered if you and Heidi had some time, would love to invite you to come by our house. And I remember calling Heidi, or however it came about. I said, or he called her first, and she called me, and we talked, and we said, this is odd. What do you think? And so we decided, okay, well, we're going to go. And so we got there, and we small talked for a moment. And then this pastor looked at us and said, so anyway, the reason you're here is I just wanted to apologize. Said, for 8 years of my life, I've been ashamed to look you in the eye. You have come to me, and you have loved me, and you have welcomed me, and you have hugged me. And he said, a lot of times in my life, I've had where people, they give you the hug, but while they're patting you on the back, they're really stabbing you with a knife, like kind of a thing. And he said, but whenever you would come and greet me, and you would I would leave, and he said, I just was embarrassed to look at you because I knew your love was real, and I didn't know how to receive it. And it was the most heartfelt apology I've ever experienced. And Heidi and I were completely mesmerized in that moment. And we couldn't believe it. And that's affected me greatly in my life because there's something about a real heartfelt apology. And so when something comes from our heart, it's different. So when we read through this, and Paul says to do the will of God from your heart, what that looks like is so different and the acceptance of that within our heart, the acceptance of God's will in our life is so different when it comes from within our heart. And so we have to understand that. And what Paul is referring to here in Ephesians is this need to pursue God's will from that deep place, from that place inside the heart, where truth lies, where real commitment lies, where passion and acceptance lies. And that's that place deep within our heart. And when our heart is filled with the Holy Spirit, like we've been talking about for weeks, this is so much easier to do. It's a lot easier to accept God's will in your life when your heart is filled with the Holy Spirit. When anger and bitterness and hatred are there and they're chewing up space, it makes it difficult to accept God's will. It makes it difficult to love God and love people from your heart when your heart isn't capable because your heart's full of other stuff. And we've been talking about this for weeks. But when we get to the place, that place in our heart that we are truly willing to accept God's will concerning anything in our life, our world will begin to change. Your world will change drastically when you come to a place that you are willing to accept what the will of God is. And I don't mean that we always will understand it or that we will always like it, but we have to learn to embrace and accept it when it happens. And it allows us to follow God's plan that he has laid out for us when we accept the will of God in our life. When we accept the things that are going on and transpiring and happening in our life, we have to learn to trust God this deeply. Now, I don't know about you, but I have had this issue. But have any of you had something happen in your life that you just did not understand how it could be God's will? If you're breathing, you better say yes. Because that's the truth. We've all had things happen in our lives that we didn't get, we didn't understand. But when we learn to trust God with all our heart and we learn to live in a place of acceptance of his will for our life, then everything begins to change. And that doesn't always mean that it's immediate. We just talked about this Tuesday night. Peggy was sharing with us a story. We were talking about what happened with their cabin. Can I say this? We talked about it. I told you. I said that story lined up. And it's not even in my notes, but we talked about, so a number of years ago, and many of you remember, the droughts were bad and trees were in desperate need of water in our forest areas, and many of them were dying and drying up, and then this thing called the bark beetle came along, and it began killing trees. And if you heard their story, hundreds of trees on their property were destroyed. Gorgeous, hundreds of years old. Massive trees. Part of what made the area so beautiful around the cabin up there were these beautiful trees, and they were destroyed. Now, in that moment, when they're looking at these trees dying on their property and having to remove them and get them taken out and clearing out all this space around their cabin, changing the look of everything, I'm sure there were moments in there where we thought, why is this going on, God? We love this beautiful view we had out here of these trees, and why? I can't believe you just let them all die. Well, 5-6 years later, these massive fires came roaring through. And one of them, as you know, because we've been praying, went right through their property. And it should have destroyed their cabin. But do you know that it still stands? And do you know why? Because there were no trees around it to catch fire. We talked about how God was planning ahead. Now, we didn't know that 5-6 years ago when this stuff started happening and it was so difficult and sad. But when you live in a place of God, serving God and trusting in his will, we have to go, God, you've got to be seeing something I don't. And we can go back to that and look at that and say, there has to be something there, God. And when we learn to look at the moments like that, we approach them differently, and we have an acceptance of God's will differently when we learn to live there. Because who would have thought that was part of God's plan, was protecting their cabin by allowing that to happen, so that place could still be standing as a testimony to God's goodness. And we've talked about that, and I prayed about that when the fires came. Heidi and I, we prayed, and I kept praying and saying, God, this cabin's going to stand because you have a testimony there. And as we talked the other night, I realized he does. There is a great testimony to people of the goodness of God, even when we don't see it. And I've had a bunch of those situations in my life, and I don't want to tie up a lot of time this morning just telling you my stories, but I'll go back to, I want to tell you two of them, two situations in which I really didn't get it. One in which I've seen the outcome, and I totally understand God's plan. The second one, I still to this day do not. So the first one goes back to the story I shared with you about what happened at that church that we were involved in ministry at, and we were heartbroken and devastated. We didn't understand. God, what are you doing? I don't understand this situation. We know you've called us to ministry, and you called us here specifically into this place, and why are we now being told that we're not going to serve in ministry in this place? And we didn't get it. We were devastated. We spent many days heartbroken, crying, praying to God, God, we don't get it. We don't see it. How can this be from you? As 6 months fast forwarding, we went to, we ended up sitting and having a conversation with the pastor of the East Hills Church of the Nazarene, Russell Wolf. And in that conversation, he just said, hey, I would love to invite you guys to come and be the youth pastors at our church. And we were praying, God, we just want to be found, God, in your will. What is your will for our lives? And out of nowhere, this conversation happened, and he just said, look, I can't offer you anything. His words were, he said, I can't offer you anything except the right hand of fellowship and the opportunity to love teenagers. And we said, you know what? Let's pray. And we began to pray. And we felt like God said, this is some part of my plan. Now, that church became Ridgeview Community Church. That is this church. And had it not been for what happened in that first ministry assignment, we would never have ended up in the Church of the Nazarene, and most of you, we would never, ever have met. Think about that. Wally, we would never have known one another, ever. Our paths would never have crossed had that first situation not taken place. Some of you we would have met because my parents were over at the Nazarene Church, but many of you we would have never known. And so I look back on that and go, wow. See, God had bigger plans than I did. I didn't think way back there that God would ever call us to be senior pastors and lead a church. That was never part of our agenda. But God had bigger plans. And so now I can look back and see how God's will was playing out in all of that. And I see that he had a plan and how he used that and has shaped that, and he needed that to take place. And I get that now. The second situation happened when my daughter Sierra was born. We were planning mission trip, Project Yes, to go to Mexico to do missions. And it was several weeks before the baby was due. And, it was going to be a no big deal. We're going to go down there, do our mission trip, and come right back. And in that time, something happened. Sierra changed the plan. And on April Fool's Day, she decided, I'm just going to fool everybody, and I'm going to just enter the world early. And we already had, a date planned to have Heidi's C-section well over after I got back, and everything was planned out perfectly. But I wasn't there. I wasn't there when she came into the world. Some of you were there. I wasn't there. Some of you were with Heidi when her water broke over at Al and Ada's Seymour's house. And some of you here drove her to the hospital, Claudius and Martha Brown. I wasn't there. Some of you were home sleeping. Some of you didn't believe her when she called and said, my water broke and I'm going to the hospital. Carrie. Her own sister. Well, whatever. It's April 1st. I'm not going. I guess I'll drive down to the hospital. All this stuff. And the whole time, I have no idea that any of this is going on. By the time I find out, I have a daughter. I don't know about this. All I knew is that in that moment, I was doing what God had called me to do. God had called me to take this group of teenagers on this mission trip to Mexico. And I knew that. I think Carrie Ann and Christine were with us on that one, and maybe Tammy and Daniel. I don't know who all was on that particular one, but we're there, and I know that was part of God's plan for my life in that moment, and it was his will that I was there. I know that. But I don't know to this day, and we're talking 24 years later, right? Yeah. 24 years later, I'm still asking God, what was your point? Why was I not there? It is to this day the most disappointing moment in my life. And just preparing this message and writing this down and thinking about this is emotional. Like, I've watched her birth once in my life, and I have never watched it again because I struggle with that still. Because it's such an emotional thing, because I wasn't there. And I don't get that. And I ask God over and over, what's the deal? God, how is that your will that I wasn't there? And that I missed out on this thing, and learning to accept that. And I've had to accept it. And and it took me a while. You guys got to know that. I didn't just go, oh, it's okay. I was on the phone, standing in the rain, outside the border of Tecate, Mexico, because back then we didn't have cell phones at work. You had to go across the border to use a payphone. And I'm on the American side, screaming in the rain, no, no, no. And then I had to go back across the border, and they close it at 10 o'clock at night, or at midnight, and they don't open it again until 6 in the morning. And I had to go back across and stay there all night so that I could go back at 6 a.m. I didn't get that. I still don't get that. All I know is when we had our first child, Madison, Heidi spent 18 hours in labor. She had the flu like you cannot believe, was incredibly sick the whole time. Her sister Carrie stood there with me, and we flipped a coin, and one got heads and one got tails. And I got heads, praise the Lord. But for 18 hours, Carrie and I cared for her. And then the doctors came in and looked at Carrie and said, you need to leave. We're going to take her for a C-section, and you're done. And I remember we felt so bad that she put all of that time and effort into that moment, and then they just said, leave. And I remember one thing. Before I left when I got close to leaving for the mission trip, I realized it was like, man, this is really close. I don't know how this is close to the birth. But I remember I looked at Carrie and I said, if you weren't here, I wouldn't go. But I know that if something happens, you'll be there. She was. And she got to be there. She got to be with Heidi. She got to be in there for the birth. I have her on video saying, T.O., well, that's what they call me, T.O. T.O., I'm so sorry you're not here. And then she stops and says, actually, no, I'm not. Now, I don't know how that's part of God's will and his perfect plan. I don't get that. But she got a very special blessing in her life, and she got to be with her sister, and that was special. My dad got to sit in the hospital room there and hold Sierra the whole first night of her life while Heidi rested. They have a unique bond. You know, he wouldn't trade that for anything in the world. As she sits next to him today, no idea, wasn't even thinking about she would be here today when we were planning these messages. I don't get it. And I don't know where you are in some of your things, but sometimes we just don't get it. We just don't understand it. But that's part of the beauty of having a heart that seeks God's will. It's an emotional journey. It's what we do. We struggle with those things because God created us as emotional people. That was his intention. I could go on and tell you that I don't understand why my mom had to die the way she did, why she had to suffer through a disease that was so horrible, why her death had to be an awful experience, and why it had to happen in a pandemic. I don't get that. And I have prayed that prayer over and over to God, and we have had lots of conversations. And I don't understand it, but I accept it. And that's what I'm trying to get you to understand. When you have a heart that is willing to accept God's will, amazing things will begin to transpire in your life. I find peace and comfort and joy in knowing that I daily am living in God's will. That's what keeps me going. That's where I find my comfort and everything in my life that helps me move forward. In Ephesians chapter 5, it says these words, "Be very careful then how you live, not as unwise, but as wise, making the most of every opportunity because the days are evil. Therefore, do not be foolish. I love that. But understand what the Lord's will is for you, Ephesians 5:15-17. Paul is literally begging right now, begging us to take action in how we approach everyday life. He wants us to be intentional about how we seek the will of God. That's what his desire is. And it's a tremendous caution that he throws out to us here. He says that we need to make sure that we're taking time to seek God, to truly seek God and search for his daily will in our life. And his idea in this is that the unwise are those that do not rely on God's leading and wisdom for their life. Translated in some, it just says, he says the words, do not live as fools. And I don't know about you, but I don't want anyone to call me a fool. And that's what he's saying. Don't live as a fool, because a fool lives outside of God's will. And then we get into the whole making the most of every opportunity that's there that he talks about. And this usage of this, the way it's written here, is this idea of buying up opportunities that would have long-lasting benefits or profits to an individual. It's an investment, is what he is saying. So we live, and when we live within God's will, we're literally investing in our future. And so when we learn to live wise in this moment, we're investing in our future moments. I read in something at some point that said, Paul's literally just saying, he's screaming out, carpe diem, or seize the day. Take full advantage of every opportunity that God provides and get the most out of every day. Be found, he's urgently speaking to us to be found pursuing God's will. And if we take into consideration the whole thing, he says, in there he's talking about, he says the days are evil. I mean, he could write that today, right? I mean, the days are evil, right? It's today. More so than ever, the days are evil. We see it and we feel it. And that's why we have to take great effort to not live foolishly or without thought, but instead to seek to know what God's will is for us in the very right now. Now, back to this idea that the healthy heart seeks God's will that the heart that seeks God's will is a healthy heart. Paul's challenging us. He's challenging us to apply real effort to knowing God and obeying his plans for our lives. And in Jeremiah 29:13, we read these words. It says, you will seek me and you will find me when you seek me with all your heart, wholeheartedly, like we talked about last week. People ask me often, how do I know what God's will is for me? How do I know what God's will is for my life? And I tell them, this is how. When you seek God with all your heart, his word says that you will find him. And when you find him, then all you have to do is submit your heart to his will and embrace the journey that he has you on. It's really not as hard as we make it. But we think it's so difficult. But Paul just says, look, stay with him. Stick with God. Trust him daily, and he will do it. Proverbs 3:5-6 says, when you trust God with all your heart and not lean on your own understanding, and in everything you do acknowledge him, he will direct your path. He will give you and explain to you, this is my will for you today. I think many of us want that big picture thing. Well, I want to know what God's will is. You know what God's will is? Get up, seek him, have a relationship with him, and do it again tomorrow. That's his will. And in that, when we do that every day, he begins exposing other things in our lives that are part of his will. But that's what we have to do. And nowhere in this book does it say that it's smooth, that it's easy, that it isn't painful, and that it's always filled with absolute clarity, and that you will know every day what God is doing. Nowhere does it say that. But God promises that his way is the best way. And if you go back to Jesus praying in the garden before he would be captured, before he would give himself and allow himself to be taken prisoner, we see him live this out so clearly in the words of Luke 22:42, where Jesus simply says, Father, if you're willing, take this cup from me, yet not my will, but yours be done. I mean, Jesus says it right there. God, I don't want to go through this. I really don't. But I'm trusting in your will and not my own. And I've said it before, and I'll say this till the day I die. If Jesus did it, I want to do it. It's really like that easy. If he did it, model it. And he prayed that and said, God, I don't get this. I don't like it. But you know what? I trust you more than I trust me. So your will, not mine. And he modeled this heart of humility, this heart for God that loved wholeheartedly and that was willing to accept what it was that God had laid out for him. I shared with you recently about, I spoke a little bit and mentioned the song Thy Will. And in a few moments, I'm going to have our worship team come up. We're going to close singing this. But I wanted to read to you the words of the songwriter and what she had to say about this particular song. And I alluded to it a little bit recently, but these are some of her words. She said, I wrote this song about a very recent experience that left me heartbroken and asking why and facing some of my most difficult days. She said, this song is my letter to God. And as I ask some really hard questions, I hold on to the truth that there is so much more to the story of my life that I cannot see, but that I still choose to trust him. Now, at first, I'll tell you, Hillary, who wrote this letter, who wrote this song, she didn't share the private details of what was behind the song. She wrote this song, and this song came out, and for about a year, this song circulated, and it was being played, and people were being affected by it, and people were writing stories to her and telling her how this song was impacting their life, and she wanted it that way. She didn't want listeners to just be impressed and moved by her story. She wanted them to be moved by the words and allow God to move in their life. And so it says that she said that after a year, she began sharing how working on this song was her therapy. And she said that for her, it was how she overcame this loss and this thing of this time of going, God, I don't understand this at all. And her and her husband were expecting their second child when she suffered a miscarriage fairly far into the pregnancy. And so her words, she says, this was my honest conversation with God about why do bad things happen, God. She said, but ultimately, I came back to, I trust your will for my life and that everything is going to be okay. And so being able to write the song, said, was such a part of the healing process for her in the beginning. And now, she said, it's been even more so over the years as people have shared the feedback in their own lives of how the words of this song have helped them through their difficult situation and circumstances and how it's touching their lives. And in a moment, we're going to close in that and everything. And so I'll invite the worship team to come set up. And as they do, I want us to be able to open our hearts this morning. And I want you, whether you're here or watching or listening, I want you to open your heart to whatever's been going on in your life, to the things that haven't made sense, to the things that have been painful and the things that have hurt. And I want to challenge you to be able to say, God, I'm so confused. And I don't understand how this thing could be from you. But beyond it all and in the midst of it all, my heart desires to know your will. And I'm going to trust you beyond what my mind can process. And I'm going to say, God, thy will be done in my life. And I don't know, any of what's going on in each of our lives. We're all in separate places. But the main thing this morning is just allowing your heart to come into a place where you're willing to accept this concept of God, your will is bigger than my comprehension. And that even when I don't understand it, I'm going to make the choice to accept it because I know that you are still God. And that's what I do for me in some of those situations right now that I still don't see. But I just keep saying, God, I'm trusting you because your will for my life is so much greater than anything I can ever see. And I want to encourage you to do the same. I'd invite you to stand if you can, and the altars are always open if you want to pray. But I would just challenge you to make this your prayer, as Hillary, who wrote this song, made it her prayer. And make this your prayer to God in whatever your circumstances are. I just want to challenge you to open your heart to the possibility of being able to live and accept what God's will is. Okay. We're good. Well, the good thing is that it is all well. And it's okay, because obviously God has other plans, and we had multiple conversations, and we're a different direction. And sometimes that's okay, because that's the way God works. That is his will. And so what I want to challenge you to do is two things then. One, I want you to listen to the song today, Thy Will. I want you to play that, and I want you to listen to it. But maybe this morning we're just supposed to be able to declare that God, in spite of what is happening, in spite of the things I don't get and I don't understand, that it's still well in my soul. And we can do that. Because I can say that to you today, that even though there's these things that I still don't get, I stand before you saying, God, it is well with my soul. Even though I hurt some days I cry over things that are still hard for me to fully get and grasp. But in my soul, it is well. And so that must be God's will for us today. And that's all right. That we will sing, it is well. Father, we just don't always understand. You do things in different ways. And God, we make our plans, and you have bigger plans. And so today, whatever it is that's been going on in our lives, may we truly be able to say, it is well. God, may we trust you that big and that deep and that much to accept the things in our life from deep within our hearts and say, God, it's your will, as your own Son laid out for us when he said, God, Father, your will be done and not mine. So, Lord, help us this morning to embrace and accept the depth of your love even when we don't understand. And may we be able to declare today that it is well with my soul. Bless us as we close in song this morning. Through it all
is well. Oh, it is well. So let go, my soul, and trust in Him. The waves and wind still know His name. So let go, my soul, and trust in Him. The waves and wind still know His name. The waves and wind still know His name. It is well with my soul. It is well with my soul. Oh, it is well with my soul. Oh, it is well. It is well with my soul. Oh, it is well. Oh, with my soul. It is well with my soul. Oh, it is well with my soul. Oh, it is well. It is well with my soul. Oh, it is well. It is well with my soul. Oh, it is well. It is well with my soul. Through it all, my eyes are on you. Through it all, it is well. Through it all, my eyes are on you, and it is well with me.
So great that we serve a God who even the waves and the wind know His name. And even they bow at the sound of His voice. And if that's true, then how much does He know about us? How much more does He know what's right for us? I hope that you can grow into that place where learning to accept it changes everything. And I hope that you're finding encouragement in developing this healthy heart for God. And next week, I think we're going to wrap up our time talking about this, or maybe not. We'll see what His will is, right? If you brought tithes and offerings this morning, you can give those and drop those on your way out. We thank you for that. Thank you for your faithfulness. Thank you for loving us and our pastoral team here and making us feel so special. You guys are awesome. We pray that your week is blessed. Don't forget the announcements. Check out the Facebook page. If you're watching online and you've forgotten, they're in your bulletins here. If you have it, come and be a part of what's going on. We are doing things and God is moving. So God bless you. Have a great week. And we'll see you next Sunday. God bless.